Good evening. Sorry for that little delay. I was wearing my Southwest Strong mask because I want to remind everyone, even though we're virtual, we're still Southwest Strong. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining this very important meeting. I'm Donna Purchase. I'm president of the Southwest Neighborhood Assembly, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this very special meeting, which is focused on safety in Southwest. I love Southwest DC. When I moved here more than 30 years ago, I knew I found the right neighborhood for me and for my family. It was a small, friendly, walkable community. Many of my neighbors were very long-time residents who welcomed me and helped me get acclimated to the neighborhood. They were also very involved in many community activities. Southwest is a very active community. Today, most of those neighbors are still here, but the neighborhood, like most of the city, has changed. With the increased development and event activity that we are experiencing, we are now experiencing increased crime and drug use, and we are concerned. Tonight, you will hear from the individuals who are tasked with addressing these issues to keep our neighborhoods safe. And about SWNA. SWNA, the Southwest Neighborhood Assembly, is a local civic organization. We were founded in 1964. We're governed by bylaws and an elected board. Our mission is to improve the quality of life for its more than 13,000 residents. The assembly consists of the Southwester, a monthly news publication, which I hope everyone is reading. I invite you to visit our website, easy to remember, swdc.org. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Council Member Charles Allen, who chairs the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. The committee oversees more than 30 agencies, boards, and commissions under a few broad topics, including criminal justice and law enforcement, violence prevention and intervention, fire and emergency medical services, corrections, victims' rights, homeland security, forensic science, elections and campaign finance, and juvenile justice. To learn more about Councilman Allen and his service, please visit his website, charlesallenward6.com. And now, Councilman, I guess I'm elevating your topic here. We'd like to welcome you back tonight. We know how busy you are because of what I just read. I had no idea. I look at your website all the time, but I never read about the Judiciary Committee. So I was wondering, how do you have time to do all this? Anyway, I'm going to let you speak for yourself and tell welcome and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Donna. I appreciate that. And of course, the answer to your question of how do we get it all done is one, an incredible staff and frankly, incredible neighbors. The neighborhood of Southwest is just phenomenal. Anytime we have a challenge, anytime we have a crisis, the neighbors and residents and leaders of Southwest step up, pull together, and bring a focused attention that hold each other accountable, but always moving forward. And that's how we get it done. And I'm really grateful for that. We've done it before, and we know we can do it again. Donna, thank you for inviting me. You've got an amazing panel, and so I'm excited about that. Thank you to SWNA for, I think, creating a really timely conversation. And I'm really honored to be able to be here and share the virtual stage with these distinguished panelists. I think you've brought together, I think, the district's most important public safety leaders, frankly, leaders who represent the government agencies that each have critical roles to play in improving safety across the district and right here in Southwest. None of them can do it alone. None of them can do it alone. But so many of the leaders are on this panel. I get to work with them every day. Sometimes maybe they don't want to talk to me every day, but I enjoy it because it's something where we really work hard, even with that healthy tension that exists sometimes between executive and legislative branches. There's no question everybody's committed to the exact same goal, and we pull together and really try to move our city forward to be at that safe and just city and rise to that moment to meet the challenges that are in front of us. I do that as your council member, and then I do that as the chair of the council's Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. So tonight, we're going to hear directly from these leaders about their work, both the immediate actions that they can take to help improve public safety, but also, and I think incredibly importantly, the long-term strategies. Many of the efforts that the leaders on tonight's panel are talking about, in addition to their day-to-day responses, are about improving public safety coordination and partnership within government and between government and community. What I really appreciate about the panel you've pulled together is how comprehensive you've structured tonight's conversation. It shows how the pieces have to fit together so that they complement one another. Accountability when violence and harm is done, focused prevention to break cycles and stop violence in the first place. And of course, having Fire and EMS here to recognize their critical roles in responding to crisis, be it a medical emergency or, as we have just recently seen, a devastating fire in our community. I think we got to continue expanding that as well, of course. We think about the role of the Department of Parks and Recreation, think about the roles of our schools. I think we need to, if we believe in a whole of government approach, we have to be able to bring every partner to the table and have them be a part of the solutions we're bringing together. And of course, we couldn't be coming together in a more urgent moment to talk about the roles that each of these individuals tonight play and what's truly needed to help turn the tide, both for our city and then specifically right here in Southwest. I know that specific to Southwest, our panelists are going to be very focused on rising gun violence and, of course, tragically, the crisis of opioid abuse. It was only just a few days ago, many of us attended a vigil with community leaders, family, and friends to recognize and celebrate the lives of our neighbors that were lost to overdoses in January. It was a call to action, and frankly, it was a chilling reminder that more residents in the district died of opioid overdoses than homicides, both significant public health emergencies and crises that we have to confront. Both of them, they require a very focused response. In terms of gun violence, this means that our resources have to be very narrowly focused on the relatively small number of people most at risk of committing harm, which we know is actually a very identifiable population. And that's where the partnerships you're going to hear about tonight are so critical. That's my own priority for Southwest and down at the Wilson Building to push hard for that strategic coordination and the collaboration across the full spectrum of our district's public safety agencies and all of government, all of community. So I appreciate the chance to be able to say a quick hello at the beginning of the meeting. I'm really excited for the panelists that you've pulled together. You've got some powerhouse joining your conversation and discussion tonight. And I look forward to being able to listen to some of it, but really look forward to seeing how they talk to you and help be able to talk about the vision that they have to both meet the immediate as well as those strategic decisions and those strategic investments we're making to make sure that we are a safe and a just city in Southwest and across the whole city. So thanks, Donna. I will kick it back over to you at this point.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm going to just say Charles because I feel like you're my friend. I'm going to say thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the work you do. So we're looking forward to working with you further. And I just want to commend your amazing staff. They are on it. You ask a question, you get an answer like super fast. It seems like they also work 24 hours a day. I'm amazed sometimes at the timestamps on replies. So anyway, thank you very much. And
you got it, Donna. Thanks.
Stay with us for a while and listen.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight's meeting, Mike Goodman. Mike is the editor of the Southwester. And as a reminder, SWNA and the Southwester are staffed 100% by volunteers. So if you can imagine the enormous responsibility of being the editor of a newspaper, you can just appreciate the volunteer hours that Mike puts in. So Mike, we're going to bring you on. Looking for Mike. There you are. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, no, thank you, Mike. Not only thank you for tonight, but thank you for the publications of the Southwester. I get so many compliments. I'm now even getting more ads in. So we're happy to have you. And I'm going to say, take it away, Mike.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Love helping out with SWNA and am proud to help out as far as being editor-in-chief of the Southwester. As Donna mentioned, the volunteer capacity with all volunteer staff, including our great copy editor, Melissa Silverman, great distribution team, and of course, Donna and Beth Hall and others, and Perry Klein are just huge helps, and all doing it just to try to better the community and hopefully better the city as a part of that. So I would encourage you to check out thesouthwester.com or check out our hard copy, which is distributed on a monthly basis, usually around the first of the month, all over Southwest and Navy Yard. And of course, get in touch with us. The email is on the screen here, or get in touch with SWNA if you have questions or if you would like to submit articles or photos or advertise. But let's jump into it for tonight. You can notice that when you put in comments, no matter what forum you're watching this through or which digital format, the comments do show up for other viewers to see as well as us. And I will try my best to pull questions out of the comments and present those to our great panel here. So please feel free to provide comments, but particularly those that would be additional questions for the panel. And now I think we will move into introductions. I will ask each individual panelist to introduce themselves. We'll start with Chief Conti, and then we will go around the horn. And so I'll call on different panelists for an introduction, give us an overview of their responsibilities and what they're working on, and then we'll jump into questions. So we could bring Chief Conti up if he is available. Hi, Chief. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Great. Thank you for joining us. And I'll ask you to start, please, with introduce yourself and give an overview of your responsibilities and what you're working on.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Mike. And a special thank you to SWNA for all the support, to the Metropolitan Police Department, as well as the DC Police Foundation. I would be remiss if I did not mention that. We certainly appreciate your contributions to help MPD to further its mission in communities and building trust with communities. So thank you for that. Aside from that, obviously, the Metropolitan Police Department bears a huge responsibility when it comes to public safety in our city. But I think, as Councilmember Allen just stated at the very beginning, MPD is a piece of the entire, as I oftentimes refer to, as the ecosystem when it comes to public safety. And certainly in this seat that I've been sitting in now since January of last year, no one entity will be able to navigate this entire maze, if you will, of all the challenges that we experience in community oftentimes. But what I do see and appreciate is the fact that I believe that we really do have all of the ingredients to get those things done. There have been historic investments in alternative means to public safety. There have been investments in our police department. There have been investments in nonprofit groups and so forth. And I think that really all of those things together allow us as a city to move forward and to really do some different, to do some interesting things that will help us to see better, safer streets in Washington, D.C. As I specifically just kind of think about the Metropolitan Police Department and some of the things that we're doing, as Councilmember Allen mentioned, we are trying to be more strategic, scalpel-like, as a matter of fact, in terms of how we address violence in the city, focusing on specific people in specific places. And that's very, very, very important. As he mentioned, we know through analysis that there are a very small amount of people that commit the majority of the crime that we see in Washington, D.C. And with that, knowing that there's a small population of people, it is our effort to really focus on those individuals, but not just through law enforcement means. If there are other entities or persons within our Justice Department ecosystem or our criminal justice ecosystem, or really just kind of from the whole of government approach that will assist us in bringing services to individuals who need them, or in some cases, lock up people who need to be locked up, then the Metropolitan Police Department certainly wants to do its part in all of that. So in addition to focusing on just the people and the places to build on that strategy and intelligence-led strategy, the Metropolitan Police Department recently kicked off its homicide reduction partnership, where we're working very closely with our federal partners. One of the things that we've learned is that while we have a workforce that's at, just a little bit over 3,500 right now in comparison to where we were this time last year, we have learned how to try to do more with less. But in addition to that, also looked at how we build on partnerships with our federal partners to be able to be more impactful in the communities that we serve. So I look forward to talking to you guys more about that. That's my couple of quick seconds intro, and I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Conti. Really appreciate it. We'll continue with introductions. We'll go to Fire and EMS Chief John Donnelly next, and then we'll come back to Chief Conti and the full group for some Q&A. And as we bring Chief Donnelly on, I just want to express condolences from SWNA and from the Southwester. Former DC Fire Chief, Chief Ellerby, just recently passed away. I know that's front of mind for Chief Donnelly, and frankly, probably for all of our panelists and perhaps many viewers too, as I know he was known throughout the community. So we were very sorry to see that news. But if Chief Donnelly can come to the screen, then we'll ask you, Chief, to do your introduction and give an overview of what you're working on, please.
Great. Good evening. I'm Chief John Donnelly from DC Fire and EMS, and you're right. Thank you for the kind words about Chief Ellerby. What a shock. 61 is very young. The Fire and EMS is working on a whole lot of things. We are focused not only on fire prevention and getting the fires out, but we're doing a lot of amazing things in the emergency medical world in terms of getting people to the right care, using our nurse triage line, using some alternative destinations outside of emergency rooms to get people the help they need. So we hope that you don't ever need us, but if you do, that as you work through the process, you may not see it. We may be able to hook you up with a Uber or a Lyft vehicle that takes you back and forth to a clinic visit if you need that. Or if is what you need, we take you to the emergency room. So there's a lot going on there. I'd be happy to answer questions about it as we go through. I see our list of questions is pretty good. So why don't we wait for that? But thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief. And then we'll move to one or two additional MPD individuals. I believe we have Chief Wright on, Assistant Chief Andre Wright. If he can come to the front. Here we go. Assistant Chief, are you able to hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Sound
Okay.
Sound good and look good. So yeah, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on.
Thank you. I've been popping in and out of this, so but I'm glad to be here. The boss, the Chief Conti, really said all that obviously needs to be said. I'll be taking my lead from him, but I am Assistant Chief Andre Wright of Patrol Services South. The 1st District, 6th District, and the 7th District falls under me. I am ultimately responsible to make sure that all of the resources, the strategies, strategic policing, hotspot policing, follow up to crime, partnership with key agencies, nonprofit agencies, and the like. That is my responsibility to make sure that the commanders have what they need and that I'm able to bolster their strategies so that you all feel that in community. And obviously I answer to the Chief Conti, and get guidance from him. So I am glad to be here and whatever input that I can give, I'm glad to give. So thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you for that. And our first question, once we get to it, is actually about the use of hotspots as far as allocating MPD resources. So I'm sure we'll come back to you, Chief Wright. And next we have Commander Ralph McLean. He's the 1st District Commander, which does include Southwest. So plays a direct role in resource allocation for MPD in our community. We can bring Commander McLean up to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me into your computers. I'm Ralph McLean. I'm a 39-year member of the Metropolitan Police Department. I've been the commander of the 1st District since last July. I'm very, very happy to be at 1D. It's a neighborhood I know well from my prior time there as a captain in 2003 to 2007. 1D, if you don't know, goes from the Washington Channel all the way over to RFK Stadium in the river. It goes on the south side from the Potomac and Anacostia rivers up to New York Avenue, Florida Avenue, and it goes in up and down through some neighborhoods over in Northeast, and then all the way back over to RFK. So I'm here to answer any questions you have. We're working hard at 1D to try and knock down some of the crime that we've had lately, and I'll cut myself off and wait for questions.
Great, thank you, Commander. And then next we have the Director of Wharf Security, Diane Grooms. We really appreciate Ms. Grooms joining us, given the impact of the wharf in Southwest. And after Ms. Grooms introduces herself, then we will bring all of the panelists here on our virtual stage and then start Q&A. But Ms. Grooms, please introduce yourself and let us know what you're working on in this role.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, SWNA, for including me and the District Wharf in this important conversation. I believe I have a very unique perspective on this topic. My name is Diane Grooms. Actually a retired member of the greatest police force there is, the Metropolitan Police Department. Served 27 years there, and proud to see the panelists, all three phenomenal leaders. So we're in good hands in DC. I'm also a resident of DC and Southwest, so I appreciate SWNA. And as Charles Allen said, our council member, Southwest is a very special place, a very active, proactive community that, leads the charge on, pitching in when neighbors need help, supporting police efforts, the fire department efforts. And everyone's been so supportive here at the Wharf. It's going to be 5 years in May that I've been with the Wharf, and we're really busy right now with phase 2. That's going to be basically a rolling opening. In fact, today, part of our garage did open to the construction workers. So we're looking forward to probably by the end of the year, it will be one full mile of the waterways. And again, as Councilmember Allen said, police and any agency and us, in the community, we can't just do it ourselves. We all have to work together. Big shout out to the fire department. They have been phenomenal partners with us at the Wharf. And again, I really appreciate the support from all the public safety entities and look forward to this conversation.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Grooms. Really appreciate you joining. And I'll ask if we could have all of the panelists come to the screen now, and we will jump into some questions. And I'll remind folks that they can use the comment section on their digital format to put in additional questions. We have a few that are in already, which we will try to get to. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll jump into policing. The first question, and these were submitted questions, so I'll essentially read them verbatim with minor edits, but maybe we'll kick this one to Chief Conti first, and then of course if Chief Wright or Commander McLean want to join in, or anyone on the panel, please do. Thank you for coming. Can you explain more about strategic policing and the use of hotspots or data-driven approaches to allocate precious police resources?
Thank you for that question, Mike. Yeah, sure. So in our agency, one of the things that I mentioned at the very onset was that we want to take a scalpel-like approach. Certainly, there are things that happen all across our city, this neighborhood, that neighborhood, this quadrant of the city, that quadrant of the city, and oftentimes when things happen, people will say, hey, well, they want to see the police. We want to see the police. Realistically, we don't have a police officer to place in every block where robbery occurs, or in every block where a burglary might happen, or a carjacking or something that happens, or shooting for that matter. We just simply don't have the resources to do that. So when you talk about strategic deployment, it's really looking at what's happening right now. It's looking at what are some of the crime trends. It's looking at what happened last year. It's projecting out in front of us what we anticipate happening due to weather changes, due to a certain person or certain group of people are not currently incarcerated. It's really being very strategic about where and how we deploy those very precious police resources. And when you focus in on hotspots, this allows officers to go into a community, park a vehicle in an area for every 2 hours, at least 15 minutes within that 2-hour period, to get out of the vehicle, walk the block in the community, engage with residents, go back to the vehicle and move around. And studies have shown that type of strategy, hotspot policing strategy, has contributed to reductions in crime. So those are some of the, in this particular space, we've tried to do not just the hotspot policing, but to add to that, as an example, our community focused patrol unit, which are all mountain bike police officers. And we're using them, again, very strategically to be deployed to communities. I'm sure you guys see them riding around the first district, but when these issues come up, in community, again, we're trying to not only focus on the issues that are coming up, those acute issues, but also being strategic in how we deploy, projecting forward, looking at what happened in the past in specific areas. Some residents, for example, when you hear about a shooting in a certain block, or you hear about something that happened in a certain area, like, oh, well, that's not a surprise. Things happen over there, all the time. Well, residents know that. Police know that, and that affords us the ability in calls like this, when we're getting feedback from residents, that affords us the ability to be able to, at roll call, for example, determine where officers are going to go and how they're going to be there. So strategic deployment is very much a part of the overall MPD strategy to make sure, again, with those precious resources that we have, that we're deploying them where they're needed and looking for opportunities to really maximize, or as a force multiplier, partner with other agencies and other community partners to increase our presence in communities. Thank you for the question, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. And that was submitted by one of our Southwest residents. And on to the next submitted one, but I think it is a nice segue, and we'll put Commander McLean on the spot here. He talked about how that 1D serves such a large downtown area, which of course includes Southwest, but you have a lot of ground to cover. When it comes to strategic policing, like the chief is talking about, or other tactics or strategies, please tell us how you determine where to deploy personnel, how to deploy resources, but what's your decision-making process for that type of deployment, given the large footprint?
Well, there's an overall distribution of personnel so that we cover the entire district, but then we take personnel beyond that minimum and we assign them to hotspot areas based on citizens' complaints, calls for service, and previous crime. So those three things play into this pretty concretely. So the captains are there are 3 sector captains, and unfortunately, Southwest has a piece of 2 different sectors. So the captain that works in PSA 103 is different from the captain in 105, but they're responsible for determining what their hotspots are and where they need to deploy their resources, and they do that in consultation with me. And the thing that comes first right now, we've seen an uptick in robberies this year. So the thing we're working on, our primary target is robberies right now, but in working on robberies, we're also bringing down other crimes by being in some of those areas.
I know in Southwest, we as a community have been very focused on recent drug overdoses, opioid overdoses, even fatalities just in the last month. I know some of you referred to those in your opening comments, as did Councilmember Allen. And maybe this is something that will open up, because I know this is front of mind for Chief Donnelly as well as MPD, and I'm sure Ms. Grooms is also, really thinking through the impact of that on the wharf and in the surrounding area. But maybe I'll start with Chief Conti again. What is being done to help combat opioid overdoses district-wide, but certainly I'd love it if some of you could get into what you're seeing and doing here in Southwest and Navy Yard.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mike. Very important issue. Certainly, we see that. We see that in a lot of communities across the city, and unfortunately, even some of us personally, have family members who struggle in this area. All of our police officers are first and foremost outfitted with Narcan. As they patrol in all their patrol cars, they have it available to them. And for those of you who don't know, it is a drug to really cut, or it is something that we administer. The fire department administers it as well. But anybody, quite honestly, can administer it, and it counters the effects of the opioid drugs, and really has saved countless numbers of lives here in the District of Columbia as a result of that deployment. So I'm very proud of the work that the Metropolitan Police Department does in that area. Beyond that piece, and I'm sure Chief Donnelly will talk about kind of, the fire department's role and the public health role in all of this. But beyond that, MPD also has a responsibility. Now that we've had these deaths and overdoses, we have a responsibility to investigate those matters. So, as I talked about a little earlier, the unique thing about kind of how we're situated, this allows us, or me, to be able to pick up the phone, call the head of the Washington field office of the DEA and say, hey, I got a problem over here. Here's the issue. And this is what I need from you. And that opens up a whole host of federal resources that we otherwise would not have access to, but it opens up a whole host of resources to help us work that investigation. We will get to the bottom of it. I mean, obviously these things, they take time. As we track back through them. But DC recently, within the last 3 months, had our first successful case of an individual who was charged as a result of the illegal opioids that they provided to a person that cost that person their life. So we certainly intend to pursue the Southwest case in that same vein. That case is ultimately charged in our federal court, and we're looking to do the same thing here. We've been receiving community cooperation, and I appreciate that. So thank you for the community members who have stepped forward to share with MPD what they know. That has been very helpful, and we'll continue to do that in the Southwest and other communities to combat the opioid crisis. The last thing that I would say, Councilmember Allen said it, best at the very beginning. We've seen more people die of opioid deaths in the District of Columbia than we have the homicides, and I think, that should capture everyone's attention about how serious of an issue we're facing. Thank you, Mike.
Chief Donnelly, you have thoughts or follow up on the opioid crisis?
Absolutely. So one of the important things to note about the opioid crisis is, at least for DC Fire and EMS, we're seeing it all across the city. It's not just in one neighborhood. It's not just in one place. It's not just in one socioeconomic class. It is, if you look at our responses, they're across the board. I don't know what that really means in a lot of ways, but it is a widespread problem. We also support the Narcan programs like MPD was talking about. While we're on the scene, we have the ability to give Narcan vials out to family members of people that we have given Narcan to, so that in the future they can give it to them. It's very easy to administer. There's no downside to it, and it will save a life. The other things that are going on with fire and EMS are some partnerships that we have with DBH. One is that we're setting up a program where we have social workers that are going out with our street calls team to any place there was a opioid response to canvass the community and to hand out Narcan and to see if there's people that we can help in some way. There's also two other things. One currently going on is we have a relationship with the Regional Addiction Program, where we're taking people after they've had an overdose or alcohol intoxication to recover. And it's instead of going to emergency room, and 50% of the people that go to this particular program enter into a recovery program of some sort. Now it's a small program, but I think it's getting outside of the box. It's getting away from the emergency rooms, and it's finding some other ways to do it. Later this year, in partnership with Department of Behavioral Health, Fire and EMS, there will be a sobering center, which will do much the same thing on a larger scale and bring some more resources in. So I think those are the types of things we're looking at. It's not only just about saving the person's life by giving them Narcan and then having them walk away. We're trying to find a way to wrap around that service so that maybe we can find something else to take the place of the opioids for them.
Thank you for that. Yeah, there was just a training in the last couple of weeks at the Southwest Library around using Narcan and harm reduction.
It is easy, isn't it?
Yes, that's what it looked like, and we're publicizing it in the Southwester just to make sure people are aware of it.
Yeah.
And Ms. Grooms, clearly as Chief Donnelly mentioned, this hits every part of the city. The numbers are pretty astounding, but what are you seeing at the wharf as it relates to drugs or opioids or overdoses, and how are you preparing? As clearly phase 2 will bring in more residents, more retail, more restaurants, etc. So what are your plans in this area as well?
Well, again, thank you for the question. Again, thanks for all the efforts MPD is making, and as well as the fire department. Again, I think it's very, I'm pleased to see progression in the city, because again, some of the things that are actually happening now were talked about a couple of years ago, about like if there is a detox center coming, the use of Narcan, other agencies, assisting out on the ground with MPD. I'd love to see that, because again, they just can't do it alone. They can't bear that social ill problem themselves. So it's good to see some systems are progressing versus just the planning phases over the past couple of years. I actually got notified about the overdoses from a community resident, a neighbor of mine. And right away, I kind of, alerted my staff, in case, Southwest is not that big, where the overdoses were occurring. It's actually 0.3 of a mile away. So I said, let's make sure we check our public restrooms. If we see anyone maybe ill on any of our benches, to call the fire department if they need any medical attention. With this great city and resources, we already signed up to get Narcan training with the Southwest bid and the government. And we went to that training session. But also I put an alert out to the contact list at the wharf, which includes our residential buildings, our retailers, our business entities, office buildings, our garage, or, Colonial, who manages the garage, again, to be on, that this occurred. And also what can be done, to call us at security for response, so we can connect with if someone needs medical attention. But again, it's bigger than just the enforcement or just the response, the outreach aspect. So we already distributed materials that, the police department has given to us to give out to the community about what to look for, how to call the police if they see anything. We have not seen the heroin problem or opioid problem down here. Again, as a resident, I kind of, I get my Starbucks every day near the Safeway, and I kind of know some of the pockets where, you see the signs of, some of the drug abuse. At the wharf, we are not immune to drugs. I do know, and I've sought the cooperation and support of MPD about the marijuana markets. There are some online dealers in some of my residential entities. They actually were using the address of my office as a drug spot to come buy marijuana. And I reached out to DCRA as well as MPD, but DCRA, can anything be done to stop them using an address? Because I do notice guys will pull up, they sit on my bench with their bags, and we kind of, walk by and they see us and they kind of disperse. But there is a marijuana market that I am aware of, and we try to disrupt it. MPD with major narcotics has been very helpful and responsive, as well as 1D with their great patrols.
Great, thank you for that. Anything else on opioid strategy, whether long term? I know that you're dealing with these immediate cases that we've seen, but before we move on, and anyone else want to chime in or additional thoughts from the panel? Then moving on to the next, continuing kind of the MPD focus, and then we will move more to a fire safety focus in the discussion, which clearly has also been very relevant with significant fires just in the neighborhood just in the last few weeks. But continuing on with MPD and moving down our list of submitted questions. One question is, can we do more undercover work to get back at people committing crimes? I assume that means hold people accountable when they're committing crimes. So perhaps to the extent you can share, Chief Conti and your team, what does the undercover work look like, again, within appropriate bounds here, and is there more that could be done?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So there is some undercover work that takes place. We want to be in the posture of preventing as much as we can, as opposed to things happening. But things sometimes do happen, and then we have a responsibility to try to get these cases closed as quickly as we possibly can. So to answer that person's question directly, there is undercover work that takes place. You obviously would not see it. But as I mentioned, and with respect to the opioid investigation, that investigation is progressing, and is progressing as a result of the undercover work that is being done in that area.
Great, thank you for that. And this is a submitted question through the comments here. What additional steps, maybe this is for Commander McClain, but of course anyone feel free. What additional steps is MPD taking to reduce property crime around the Southwest Library? Has that been a focus?
Sorry, couldn't find my mouse pointer there. Property crime is fairly low level in and around the Southwest Library. If people see things, we like them to call 911 and let us know. But I have the crime stats up now. My violent crime is down 9%, and PSA is 103 and 105, which make up that lower area of Southwest. And my property crime is down. My property crime is down about 10% right now. The only thing that's up is I have 2 more burglaries than I had last year, and I have 9 more thefts. Most of the thefts are come out of retail establishments, and we don't know if that's more reporting or more theft, or just the fact that more people are back out again, moving around, where this time last year we were still in kind of a COVID posture. But this is one of the few areas where my auto thefts are down. My robberies are up, but my assaults are down. They kind of balance out, so I got a 9% reduction. So the area around the library isn't one that's rife with a lot of crime. I know we do have some low-level drug dealing that goes on there that we try to disrupt. So the crime, my mountain bike unit goes through there periodically, and my crime suppression team, when they get to work, they go through there early before they start working on the robberies.
Thank you. Yeah, I've seen the bike units over near the library. And Ms. Grooms, if you're still there, I'm not sure if you did just go off video, but Commander McClain has mentioned retail theft, of course, kind of low-level property crimes. To what extent are you seeing those types of crimes in or around the wharf, and how do you prepare and deal with that?
Well, I know later there's a question about, how much if there's violent crime or what kind of crime is around the wharf. Again, we're not immune to crime offenses. And I'm going to tell you, over the progression of the past 5 years, it's been a work in progress with my CVS. For the first 2 years, we actually wrote a letter, to the corporate headquarters because it was just out of control. And I don't believe in their philosophy. They kind of just want their property back. We're chasing people down the street with a thing of detergent or toilet paper, and we could get hurt. We're wasting, MPD resources coming, code 1 for a shoplifter. Now, sometimes shoplifting escalates into an ADW or something. They might pull out a knife or something like that. But again, if a retailer doesn't take accountability or follow up with, they wanting to prosecute, or what kind of proactive stance are they taking to help prevent some of this crime? Because I asked them to relocate detergent, relocate some of the electronics, in the front of the store. It's kind of hard, put that burden on MPD or even our security. I'm proud to say that after 3 managers, we actually have a very good proactive team at CVS. And kind of we work internally with, with my team and with them to help combat that. We do have some regulars from the Southwest area that are frequent flyers that come into the CVS and a couple of our other little entities, for the tip jars and things like that. And we have used the tool called the bar notice, for those that do not want to, basically behave. And we're able to have them arrested, and sometimes judges will give a contempt of court order, to keep them off the property, regarding that. But like I said, most of our thefts would be coming out of CVS, and also, like I said, some of our entities like Ben and Jerry's, is District Donut, Toastique, Chopsmith. I had to tell them stop keeping cash tip jars. Nowadays everyone's using, ATM cards or their Apple Pay, if they could just do tips that way, so people aren't coming in there to snatch their tip jars as well. There was an issue during the height of the pandemic, as everyone knows. There was no school, there was no rec centers open. So then I started having, and I tracked an increase in kind of juveniles coming down to the wharf, and again, running to CVS, and, taking the snacks and things like that. And again, what has been great is, not only with MPD, their mountain bike team, but also, they've assisted where, we kind of identify who these young people are, and they're local. And I've been able to go up and visit their homes and talk to some of the family members and connect them, MPD's with the pocket change program from SWNA, and job programs, and also other things to help some of these kids to go into a positive direction. I'm glad the Southwest Library is back open again, for an activity for these kids to do. But we've seen a decrease too since school's back, with the juveniles coming into the stores sometimes before, after school. They come in, and a lot of times they're bored. So, when you interact with them, just like I see MPD interact with them, it's actually a positive thing. And they pay for their juice and walk out. The other good thing is, the biggest thing with them is just their, they like those rent bikes, and sometimes they come on the property and, want to ride on the piers or do the wheelies all the way down the wharf. But I'm proud to say that they have never caused any physical harm or anything like that, at the wharf. But we do have some of those petty crimes. But working with our great partners, it's been much improved.
Great, thank you. Thank you for filling us in. One more on to Chief Conti, and then we will turn to fire safety. But Chief, this was also submitted previously. Can you tell us if and how officers are trained on new technology criminals are using to steal automobiles, such as relay theft and air tags?
So we haven't seen a lot of that here in the District of Columbia with the little air tags. The air tag devices are things you can order them off of Amazon, and essentially they're tracking devices. While that doesn't necessarily help to alter anything with the car, but it does give the location of a vehicle if a person is tracking it, to be able to locate where that vehicle is and then do whatever it is they do in an effort to steal it. But we've been working internally with the department through our auto theft units, making sure that they are abreast of the latest and greatest when it comes to some of the tricks of the trade for some of the thieves out there, and really trying to push that information out to community members, especially when we see trends happening in our city. There have been some other places in the country where they've had this, but we just haven't seen. We may have had an instance or two here or there, but nothing significant in that space. I'm aware of it, like I said, and we work through our auto theft units to make sure that they have that. The last thing I will say to that, education, I think, is a huge piece. The more people know, the more they grow, as I say. And as we continue to push things like that out there, and ways for people to really understand, hey, these are maybe some behaviors that I should not, involve in, for example, or be involved in. For example, when we look at our stolen autos, or we look at our carjacked vehicles as an example, just think of the people who are on this call. How many times have you got into your car and not ready to just take off just yet, but you sit there and you scroll through emails on your phone, right? And then look up and your door to your car is not locked. So it's common sense things like that, not so much of the technology stuff, but common sense things like that. I think that go a long way to help people grow when we help them with that information, so that they're not finding themselves victims of crime.
Great, thanks. I hope that's helpful for folks to hear. We will switch to fire safety, and perhaps we'll start with another one that is submitted through the comments here. Thank you again to the commenters out there. But this is probably a good one to start with. Chief Donnelly, how does the fire department determine whether residents at a building, or this person says at a building in Southwest, I'm sure they're referring to the G Street fire that we just recently had. But how does the fire department determine whether residents need to know more about fire prevention?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think it's safe to say that every one of us across the community need to know more about fire prevention, because we're still having fires. Fire is preventable. It is ultimately preventable. And a majority of our fires in homes are accidental. So I think we all need it. It's what we do right now is look at our statistics. And last year, most of our fire fatalities, which is a bellwether statistic, meaning it's an indicator of where your problem is, it involved our at-risk populations, which are senior citizens or children under 12. All but one of our fire fatalities last year were in that group. Two of them were children, and the rest of them, the other 9 or so, were older adults. What we really need is across the board is to find ways to help our older adults in our communities be able to live in their homes in a fully supported and safe way. And that's involves fire prevention, but it also involves making sure there's people checking on them and things like that. So it's a big lift, because it's what our community needs to do, and across the board, it's just like with the opiate addictions. There's a lot. It takes a community to raise a child. It also takes a community to support an older person that's going to live in their community through their life. So I hope that answered the question.
No, thank you. That helps individuals know, I think, what more we can do as a community as well, or for our loved ones. Can you speak to the recent fires in Southwest? I believe there were 2 just in the last few weeks. Of course, the one on G Street in a building had fatalities, very sadly.
Yes.
But what's the status of those investigations, or can you share any details about those?
So as far as the investigations go, one of them involved cooking, which is a common theme that we see: a pot left unattended, or a kitchen that doesn't have a safe landing area for pots next to the stove, or somebody that stores plastic in their stove or on top of their stove, or, you know, even setting your purse on your stove when you come home and forgetting it's on there, and the pilot light goes ahead and ignites it, are common things. The other fire does not have a cause yet. It's still under investigation. So we'll be sorting through that. We're confident that it's an accidental cause of fire, which when we say accidental, it doesn't look like it's the heating system or anything like that. It's either something like a candle or an electric cord, or an appliance of some sort, like a stereo or things like that. So there's some more testing being done, it's not an intentional fire. And those are pretty, what I just described are pretty much our common causes of fires.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Are there workshops for families and children on what to do during a house fire, or are there resources that, you know, parents can go to so they can be better prepared?
Absolutely. So we will come to you, we will come to your community, we will come to your child's school, we will come to your child's sporting team or art club or whatever they're doing, and do a fire safety presentation for them. You can request it two ways. On our website, there's an email at info.fems@dc.gov, or if you call 301 and let them know that's what you're interested in, somebody from our education office will reach back out to you and we'll schedule something. We do that a lot. But the basics for everybody that's listening that everybody should know is that children especially should be taught what to do when a smoke alarm goes off, that your family should have a safe meeting place, meaning a place outside of your house where everybody knows to go. And if you think that's a lot for your kids to learn, start talking to your 4-year-old. They will be all over it. They will know it, and they will guide you through the process because they're getting that in school. The second thing is that we have a lot of high rises in Southwest there, and we're getting more. High rises are you may have a smoke detector go off, but if your hallway or the stairway is filled with smoke, we want people to go back into their apartment, shut the door, put a towel over the bottom, reach out to 911 to let them know they're in there, and listen to what 911 tells you. They'll relay the message to us. These fires in these high rises stay in the apartment, generally speaking, and it's safer for you. And if there's smoke in your hallway or smoke in your stairwell, to be in that apartment than try to come down through the smoke. You can't hold your breath that long. So that's important stuff. The 911 operators will be able to give you some direction as well, and they're important to listen to.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And we'll come back to you, Chief. But Ms. Grooms, on the subject, especially with buildings, we know that, you know, the residences and of course hotels at the wharf are the high-rise buildings. To what extent have you seen issues around fire, whether residential or retail? I can't think of any off the top of my head, at least that made news. But to what extent have you had to deal with that, and how are you making sure that the community at the wharf is prepared?
Okay. Again, a big shout out. Of course, I was always prejudiced to MPD. I love them to death. But I just want to say, Chief Donnelly, you know, I have to say I love the fire department. They've been very proactive. In fact, on March 10th, you know, and engine companies 7 and 10 and 13, which are our locals, they're coming on a walkthrough of phase 2 to get familiar with it. Usually every couple months, they do walk through, you know, check on the property, make sure our fire hydrants aren't, you know, blocked. There's some of those, I don't even know the name of these things, you know, the pipes along where the benches are, making sure they're operable. And I do want to thank Chief Donnelly and his team, because after those fires in Southwest, I actually seen his community outreach. They have a community outreach section, which actually is based out of Southwest, came down and were giving out outreach materials, stopping by our apartment buildings as well as the office buildings, you know, making sure that fire smoke detectors are available, And just like the tips he gave too, that we were able to, blast that out to all the residents. At the wharf, I do know we have fire alarms that go off, and the response has been great from the fire department responding to them, trying to work with our entities to not have as many false ones and know how to reset the panels. But we did actually have a fire. It was 3 years ago in Encanto. And again, people get lax with these fire alarms that go off. People ignored that fire alarm, and it was actually a true fire, that one. So that, kind of woke everybody up that, everyone was staying in their apartment and didn't evacuate when it was a kitchen fire. Someone left their food on, like he said. There was a fire that did occur that caused a lot of water damage to entities below the apartment. So that was a learning experience for us on, how to do outreach on that. The other thing we learned, evacuation plans, as he said, a meeting point for even our restaurants, how to evacuate. This weekend we had Mardi Gras. There was 30,000 people here. How to get people, where they should go, and in case of an emergency. So the fire department has been very helpful to us, and like I said, the police department as well. And I really advocate, again, being a resident as well, be involved in your PSA meeting. I know Georgine Wallace, Captain Duro, Lieutenant Donegan of 1D, and Commander McLean, you as well, very proactive with the community meeting every month, very responsive. I'm on the alert system, so anytime there's an alert that goes out, for police, fire, we're able to share that with, the people out on the wharf with our text alert system. So I think it's a good thing if everyone does sign up for the alerts, especially with what's up and coming now, with the convoys, the war that's going on and protesting. I really want to say the communication where, the Southwest bid, again, Commander McLean, we've had telephone conference calls to talk about, the impact to the business community, even after the insurrection, having tabletop exercises, and just a good communication with the key leaders in the police department, the community, business community, the fire department, the police department, what actions to take and what to look out for and who to call and when. It's always good to be prepared.
Commander McLean, maybe you could tell us a little more about the public MPD meetings, the monthly meetings or other public meetings in our area. We did have one submitted question just asking if MPD safety meetings are open to the public. So maybe you could just touch on that.
Yeah, Diane just mentioned Georgine Wallace. She's actually the coordinator for the meeting of that involves PSAs 103 and 105, which are that part of Southwest. And if you want to get on the list, email me. If somebody wants to can't type into the comments, my email address is Ralph, RALPH, .McLean, MCLEAN, just like McLean, Virginia, at dc.gov. And I will get you to Georgine and get you on her list. If I knew her email address right off the top of my head, I'd give it to you. But I'll make sure everybody gets connected. It's a very well attended meeting, and it's one of the first ones I went to after I took command of 1D, and I've been getting to know everybody, and the people are great. Couldn't be any nicer, and keep me on my toes too.
Great. No, thanks. And Georgine is also an avid contributor to the Southwester, is doing our Faith in the Community series right now. So she's great.
I suspect she might be on here too.
Yeah, probably so. That's why we're all making sure she hears.
She's like omnipresent.
Thank you. And Chief Donnelly, Diane also mentioned the community outreach that you do, that the fire department does. Why don't you touch on that so that folks are aware of that outreach that's going on?
So we do fire prevention outreach, and we do life-saving outreach. The life-saving outreach is super important. It's hands-on hearts. If you don't know how to do hands-on hearts, which is CPR without giving anybody breaths, it'd take you less than 5 minutes to learn. Again, reach out to info.fems@dc.gov or 311. We can come to your community and schedule an event. We can save a lot of lives in our communities. And I think one of the most important things I can say about that is that the difference between Washington, D.C. and communities with high save rates for people that have a cardiac arrest is that our citizens don't know CPR. And we can do better as a community in this. So if you're not comfortable with it, if you don't know what Hands on Hearts is, please get us out. The second thing, after a significant fire in a community, we go back the next day, we knock on doors, we try to share the information, and every month we are in a different ward for our all hands on prevention days, where we come out, we knock on doors in a particular neighborhood in a ward. It's not the whole ward, and talk to people. In these, we're actually targeting those at-risk populations. We're really looking for the senior citizens that are home, trying to make sure they have what they need, and we can prevent it that way. So that's our outreach. We've been in Greenleaf recently, talking to the senior citizens there. They've had a number of fires in that building, and it is a continuing effort to keep them safe. So anything you need, reach out to us. We'll find a way to come educate.
Great. Thank you. And that responds to some of the questions and the comments here. So yes, folks should please feel free to reach out. Another for you, Chief Donnelly, and then perhaps one or two more questions, but then we'll allow for closing statements and let folks get back to their evening. But Chief Donnelly, this was another one that was submitted ahead of time. And I think folks may have seen a bit about this in the news, but allegations of financial impropriety. The question here is, can you update us on the allegations of financial impropriety in the department? And this submitter said, kudos to the assistant chief who noticed and notified auditors about it. But could you give any update on those allegations that have been covered in the news?
Chief Conti's getting ready to cut me off. So the case is actually, there's more investigations going on around that. So there really isn't anything I can talk about with that, other than to say I want everybody to know that Fire and EMS, as I'm sure MPD does as well, we take our obligation to the taxpayers' dollars very seriously. That if somebody is not doing something right with it, if they are doing something to manipulate the system to give somebody an advantage, and we will find it and we will stop it immediately. In this particular case, we observed something, we weren't sure what it was, we turned it over to law enforcement, and that's what you saw in the news.
Thank you. Yes, that's how it's supposed to work.
Yes, it's very embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you. Sounds like it's being handled. Ms. Grooms, maybe one more for you, which was also submitted. Are security personnel visible to visitors at the wharf? If not, how does someone report an incident or get assistance?
I have a team of 30 contracted security personnel. I use Allied. We are very visible and make sure that they're in bright yellow jackets or yellow fleece when it's cold. If they have a black jacket, they're gonna have to wear a visibility vest. And again, our security is mostly ambassadors versus enforcers. The number one issue I'm going to tell you, and I'm sure everyone here would agree, our number one issue at the wharf is traffic. I take incident reports on everything, and 3/4 of our incidents are traffic related. The blueprint is small, and it's just, Southwest has grown. The wharf has caused issues with, of course, with our big events. We have Anthem and Union Stage and Pearl Street Warehouse. We have a lot of people who want to come to the wharf from the whole DMV and out from that. So, traffic control is, what we really focus on. But my staff is visible. I also have outside employment with MPD, and Chief Conti. I've been attending some of your other meetings, with the DC Police Foundation, as the chief said, right now it's a challenge with the number on the force right now, even for outside employment, because I really don't want to keep calling 911 and pulling, 1D resources for things. So I would like to have my own. However, they're strapped. A lot of them, I can't even feel it sometimes, because they have many duties to, fulfill in MPD. With Charles Allen, just a couple things, sir, I would like to say. Along with traffic, I think I should not have to call 911 or 311 100 times to get a ticket. I appreciate my DPW gentleman I see on the Segway every day on Main Avenue. He's a help, but after hours, I have to count on MPD, put a ticket on private property. If we can maybe change the law where a private entity can actually write the ticket. I mean, we would go to court and everything, versus bothering our law enforcement officials, with writing a ticket when they have crime to deal with. If we can change some kind of legislation on that. Also, I just want to say big kudos. We are a waterfront, and we have liveaboards. We have residential communities on the water. I think a lot of people forget about that, which makes us special, where, we have almost 100 people that live on the water. And so for the police, harbor, the fire, harbor, divisions, a big thank you. When I was on the police department, I kind of didn't pay attention to those special resources, and I had to apologize when I came down to the wharf. The water resources are in demand. Emergencies out on the water. Since the pandemic, I'm going to tell you, the boating industry and recreational boating has exploded. The charter boats. Also, you never know what the threat will be on the water. We have water taxis, spirit cruises, kayakers, and in the future, as I told Commander McLean, we might have swimmers soon. So we need to develop more resources for the water. Try to get more resources for them. And that lovely new fireboat, Chief Donnelly, we're going to keep trying to push for that, so we keep everyone safe on land and water here at the wharf.
Great. The Southwester runs regular stories on the latest water quality reporting in the area. So we hope that swimming makes sense at some point in the future too, even though I can tell Commander McLean is worried about the security aspects of that. But one step at a time.
Yeah, I used to be the harbor master, and boats and people swimming in close proximity is a recipe for someone getting hurt.
All right. A whole nother parking and driving challenge. I think we could move into closing remarks here, although Chief Donnelly, there's just one request. If you could repeat the contact information for the Hands on Hearts training.
Info dot fems@dc.gov, or you can call 311.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. We will quickly go around the horn here for any closing thoughts, and then I'll ask everyone to stay on for Donna Purchase, our SWNA president, to say thank you and give her closing remarks. Maybe we'll start with Ms. Grooms, and then go to Commander McLean and Chief Donnelly and Chief Conti. So, Ms. Grooms.
Again, thank you, SWNA, for this, outlet to, talk about public safety. I think, I'm proud to say, love living here in Southwest, love being here at the wharf. It's a great place to work, visit, play, entertain. And a big kudos to our police department, our fire department that make that happen. They're literally a call away, and very supportive. And I really ask all residents or those on this forum, get to know your police, get to know your fire department. They are here to really help and support us. So you've made the wharf such a success, and we really appreciate it. And thank you all.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Grooms. Commander McLean.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate every opportunity to speak to the community, especially when it's kind of a more positive. We have, as the police, we get when negative things happen, we sometimes bear the brunt. But when we have positive discussions, it's better for everybody. It's if anybody needs anything, if you see something, please call 911. That's how we know what's going on. We can't be everywhere at once, and calling 911 actually creates a historical log for us so that we can go and see what things are happening where. So in the long run, it's a good thing. I'm not worried about driving my calls for service up. I'm worried about providing service. So please, if you need us, call us. Again, if I noticed there's one person here that's put a lot of questions in. I think it's Raj. Raj, if you want to get a hold of me, I am Ralph.McLean, McLean, at dc.gov. Be more than happy to talk to you about some of the questions we didn't get to. And thanks very much for your time.
Great. Thanks, Commander. Chief Donnelly.
So I'd just like to thank you for having me there. I know you all know Daryl, who lives over there. He's been agitating for me to get involved, so I appreciate that. And there was one question I didn't answer that was in the preloaded. It was Station 7 there at 1101 Half Street isn't closing. Our apparatus division will be moving over to Blue Plains at some point in the future, like 2025, 2026, when these big projects go in. And what DEMPED is doing in the community, we'll move 7 engine around right in that area, but we don't have a location for it yet. But what I can promise you is that it will be a bigger firehouse with more space in it so that more apparatus can be there, probably more ambulances to serve the community. So that's what we're looking for.
Terrific. Thank you for that update. And Chief Conti, your closing thoughts. I don't know if we lost Chief Conti right in time for the words of wisdom.
I think he froze up at just the wrong time.
Yeah. That's okay. Well, yeah, thank you to all of you. And we will ask Donna Purchase to do final closing remarks, and we'd ask that folks stay on for that. And we really appreciate all of the panelists today taking their time to inform the community and talk about these issues. Donna, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. And thanks to all of our panelists. I think all of us are feeling a little bit safer now that we've heard from you. We know that you're working for us and with us because we are part of your community. We want to thank you, Mike, especially for being our moderator tonight, being thoughtful about the questions, and we look forward to seeing a story in the March issue of the Southwestern. And in the meantime, thank you everyone who joined us. And remember, we all will stay Southwest strong. And a final good night.